Well, right here, I want to bury my testimony. That I know this gospel is true. And we're not all here by just sheer chance. And if you read the Doctrine and Covenants and any church doctrines, you'll know that the plan of coordination is the reason, part of the reason for all of this. And families are the main thing. And that when a group of men and I went ashore to capture the Germans, we were lucky because they'd only been there for a couple of days and never got a chance to set up. Had they had a chance to set up, we might not be here like this. And the chances of me coming to Utah and meeting Grandma the first time was almost slim to nothing. And coming back the second time at her age, expecting her to be married, and she wasn't. And within a 6 weeks courtship, we were married. And it's not by chance, it's divine intervention. And the reason I say that is because when I had that old ulcer operation, they done the surgery in the morning and had tubes down in my throat for all week until Friday. They took the tube out and started feeding me a half and half cream, but in the process, they had made me lactose intolerant, and I went into diarrhea. And by 6 o'clock, I was in advanced stages of dehydration. Saturday morning, sometime early Saturday morning, about between 3 and 4 o'clock, I woke up in the morning. My bed was in a rectangular room, but instead of being in the corner where it should have been, it was in the middle of the room. It was extremely bright white. But it was the type of light that didn't hurt your eyes, it was just white. And I noticed people dressed in white alongside the bed. And then across the foot of the bed, and then this side here. I thought they were interns coming around with the doctor in the morning. But then I thought, well, there's too many of them. Why would there be that many? And I tipped my head back and I've seen another group across the side of the bed. And I really got my curiosity up. So then I started to look for faces, but I couldn't see faces. From where they stood at the bed, at their waist, to about this height was just as plain as your clothes there. But from there, it was in a gray fog, and all I could see was a shoulder and the outline of a head. I couldn't see any characteristics, no faces. And I made the second trip around that bed. And this man here on my right always seems to be the most important person. And I thought, such a mystery, why would that be? So I turned and asked him, I said, well, who are you? Well, by that time, my bed was back in the corner. This was all over with. I looked out the window, started to come daylight. And as years passed, I've come to realize that because of hydration, I must have been just about that close to making the transition from this life to the next. And they were ancestors that came and ministered to me to retain me life and give me that opportunity to continue. And because of that, meeting Grandma and marriage, you're all here. I could have been lost in that little engagement with the Germans if they had been set up, and this wouldn't all have happened. And this is because of divine revelation. When I was the elders counselor, another situation, the elders counselor, the elders presbytery about 6 to 8 months after I'd been baptized, I came home from work one day and Grandma was fixing dinner, so I went to the front room, and that's when the Provo Herald used to come at night, and he said in the morning, I was sitting there in a chair reading a newspaper, and right here in the middle of my newspaper was what you call a video, but to me it was a revelation. Here comes the state president walking up my front sidewalk. Flowers on each side, he come up, dirty kind of muddy shoes, striped overalls, kind of dirty. And when the doorbell rang, I knew who was there before I even opened the door, because I'd seen him. And so I opened the door and he was there, and he said he needs to talk to you for a minute. And so I invited him in. He said, "No, my shoes are dirty." And I said, "Well, that's okay. I'll put some paper down." So I put some down. He came in and we talked for a few minutes. And the thought that went through my mind immediately was that we're going to disband the quorum presidency, because we didn't have a president, because he had moved to Salt Lake about 2 months prior. And that was the immediate thought in my mind, was going to be disbanded and changed. But he called me to be the elder president. And then I had to call counselors and general procedure like we have to do. And these type of things, if this wasn't true, wouldn't happen. And Grandma and I used to do sitting assignments all the time. Running notes. One day we was coming out of the Provo Temple, and all of a sudden I just got rush spinning through me. My hair in the back of my neck stood up. I told Grandma, I said, "One of us is going to get an assignment or a calling. Something's going to happen." So that Sunday, I got called to a seat on the High Council. And State President asked his wife was there, and I said, "Yeah," and called her in, and she wanted to know if she would support me, and yes, and the general procedure. And then we got home, about 9 o'clock, when the phone rang. It was Brother Lamb from the Provo Temple. They asked us to come over for an interview. And I just assumed, because we had been doing so many seatings, that we had finished up that particular Sunday of our 3-month assignment. And I figured probably that's what it's about. Well, our meeting was at noon. About 12:30, we were set apart as ordinance workers to Provo Temple. And part of that blessing and set apart was that our family would receive blessings for generations to come from our effort and work in the temple. And you see it now. It's happening. I had a patriarchal blessing made right after I became a member of the church. And the latter part of the blessing, it said that I would hold many important positions in the church, which I have done. I worked with the, well, at that time it was the M.I. Mutual president. When I became an elder, I was called as a council of the elders president, called as an elders president. When that period of time was up, I was called as 70. And about 7 months later, I was called as one of the 70th quorum. And then, as you know, they banished or just banded the 70th quorum, as it was at that time. And State President one Sunday called me in and told me they were disbanding and wanted to know if I'd like to be a high priest. And I said, yes. And he says, well, I'm glad. He says, because we don't have a high priest group leader in the board down there, would you take the calling? So I took that calling. And it was quite a long period after that when I broke my leg and had to go into State President and tell him that the quorum was suffering because I couldn't minister my calling. I just couldn't get around, I couldn't do the work. And shortly after that is when received the call as to see the High Council, and then that night, Grandma and I was called for an assignment to the Provo Temple, and through that blessing. And I know, as just sure as I'm standing here, that this is not a pure happen. Each of us was in this group before we came out here into mortality. And that through divine guidance, we're all here. And those who have married into the family, they have come that way because that was part of the plan. And each of the grandchildren and great-grandchildren and so forth has come, and these new two brand new babies have come into this family, not because of sheer happens or like a man walking down the street plucking an apple off a tree. They're here because they're supposed to be. They're part of this family that came in, that came in and was a group before, in the pre-life before we ever got here. So I want you to know that I know this gospel is true. And I know that if you'll read the Doctrine and Covenants, when you get on the other side, the thing that opens the door for you and moves you ahead and allows you to go past the administering angels that protect the celestial kingdom, is the ordinance that you receive in the temple. And those who've been married in the temple know that those blessings and promises are there, and you'll also be told you'll come more forth in the morning of the first resurrection, if not the morning of the second resurrection. And because of that sequence is that the importance of a temple marriage in one aspect and those temple ordinances. And I often wondered to myself, why did I ever wind up here in Utah like this? After Tammy gave me that book with what, 6,000 some odd names in it, that answered my question. That answered why I came home from the war in one piece. That's why during that administration, that group of people around my bed restored life back to me and health. And it didn't end there. The morning of Grandma dry. The morning of Grandma died, I walked a brief door and touched, and I knew she was gone. I come around her side of the bed, turned on the bed lamp, and looked at her, and you could see the spirit had left. And I stood there looking at her, not out here, but up here. Here's this cardboard box, about 2.5 feet, about 2 feet deep, and it was sitting there in front of my eyes, and I had the impression to lean over and look at it, which I did. I leaned over and looked. The box was empty. What was it telling me? Grandma was gone. So it's true. If you're faithful to live to it and live for that end, you'll have that opportunity for advancement in the celestial kingdom. And that not only this family, but your family, I being the patriarch of this group, the husbands are the patriarch of those respective groups. And they'll have the same responsibility that I have. And kind of go back, I was born in the first part of the Depression, and the last thing the family wanted was another mouth to feed. Because jobs were scarce, food was hard to come by, and things weren't very good. And I don't really think I was a really welcomed possession to that family. And consequently, over the years, I never really had what you would call a father and son relationship. I only had one brother. He was 7 years older than I was, and I never had a brother. They used to pick on me all the time when I was little, and I've always had the feeling that I was out of step with that family because I just didn't seem like I fit. And I had athletic programs. I played football and pole vault and high jump and track. And after the siege was over, they had banquets and stuff, and my folks would never come to them. I went to 2 of them, and my folks never came to them. So I quit going. And when I got in the service, we commissioned the ship, and they gave us the gold bonded invitation for all the families to take to our families, and I took to mine because they were close enough to come. So the day of the commission, we're all standing out mustered in our dress blues. The families were all sitting in the audience and go through the procedure and everything. After everything was over, all those who have families all kind of got together, and I stood there, no family. My family wouldn't even come a half a mile probably a half an hour drive down to the commissioning of the ship, and which it kind of made a hardship for me because I wound up going back on the ship, setting up on a position watching the rest of the crowd down on the dock. And it's been kind of a hard thing for me. And if it's sometime my children, especially, if it seems sometime I'm not quite the father I ought to be, it's because I never had the example of a good father to begin with. And I had to learn to be a father. And it's likewise with our children. When I joined the church, my dad stood in my front room and he ripped me up one side and down the other. When he got done, my mother stepped out and done the same thing. They went back in the bedroom, took their clothes and slammed them in a new suitcase, slammed it shut, sleeves hanging out and stuff, and they left. That's the way I see my folks go. And a number of years went by, and finally Grandma says, well, I'm going to write to them whether they care or not. So she wrote to them, we kind of wrote back and forth. And then an uncle up in Alpine, my mother's brother died, so they come up to the funeral. And Elder May was pregnant with Clifford at that time. And they didn't stay with us, they stayed in a motel. And we found out where they're at, and so we decided we'd go with them, whether they wanted to go there or not. If they didn't, we'd go back home. So anyway, we went over to the motel and went in, and Elder May sat on the bed being pregnant. And then she got talking to my mother, and my brother had been married several years and never had any children. And the first thing my mother said to Elder May was, it's not fair. You have the children, Clifford don't have any. And that's kind of a negative attitude I had in my life, being raised. And like I say, it reverts back to my own life. If I am not what you expect me to be sometimes, it's because I never had that bringing up. I never had that church background. I never had people who love me like I love you. And well, it just kind of goes on from there. And with the first pregnancy for the net, my folks are still on a hard-nosed case about my joining church, and she didn't have a mother because her mother died when she was 16. And even if I wrote down and asked my mother to come up, I'm sure she wouldn't have in the first place. So with the net, it was on-the-job training. We didn't know how to do anything. We didn't know anything about children. We just had to learn. It was just on-the-job training. And along in probably mid-70s when they started building homes in Pleasant Grove and up on the east side and stuff. I come home from work one day and told Grandma, I said, get your sweater on, let's go find your house. We spent about 3 hours riding around through the foothills of American in Pleasant Grove and then Highland out in American Fork. And we come back to Canyon Road, pull up on top of the canyon there where the old rifle range used to be. I pull off the side of the road and I said, which one do you want? She said, don't want any, let's go home. We've been there ever since. She knew more than I did. Because at the present time it's been a godsend to me because I don't have a ward home to take care of. I don't have to worry about selling it to go to something smaller. And but these things have happened in our life, and they simply are not because of just sheer circumstance or happenings or something that just happened. Everything has been planned out for us. And probably this group here today is all part of this same program. Families are forever. And I know that you as parents feel the same way I do. I look at these guys still now at their age, I still feel them as children. I don't feel them I don't see them as old age. The only one as old age is me. When I get to this age here, what you see is what you get, and that's what you're going to be one day. But again, I want you to bear in mind testimony. I know the gospel is true. I know the temple ordinances are well, first, the Savior came here and took upon us our sins, which He bought us our freedom out of that spiritual prison. And by the temple ordinances, you have to have those to come out of that spiritual prison to make that advancement into the celestial kingdom. You have to have those temple ordinances to meet those destroying angels along the way, or guardian angels along the way into the celestial kingdom that protect them. So again, I want you to know this gospel. I've had these experiences. I have these feelings. Another one. When Elder May and I work in the temple, Grandma and I work in the temple, every Christmas, general authorities would used to come down from Salt Lake, and we'd have one of the auditoriums at BYU, and all the temple people would gather there for a Christmas program. I don't know which one, anyways, one of those. As we come out, we were about midway down, came out, got in the aisle, was filing out with the rest of the people. And there's a big double doors, and as we filed out, there was about 6 guys standing in line, and I glanced up, seen them, and I just assumed they were waiting for somebody to come out. As I got closer and walked by them, I just kind of made eye contact with everybody. The second guy from the end, the minute our eyes hit, I just had a jolt go through my body. It's like somebody hit me with electricity. And I just stopped dead in my tracks and looked at him, and said, I don't know what it was. I don't know who he was. He might have been one of the Nephites that never wanted to take the death. He wanted to be translated. It could have been anybody that has authority in the church. But I have never in my life ever looked anybody in the eyes and had that same feeling go through my body as they did when I made eye contact with that person, whoever he was. But these things happen. If you're faithful and you for them, they come. They're there. So this is my testimony. I want you to know that church is true, and to obtain the higher degrees of glory, we have to inherit the church principle. We have a lot of missionaries gone out of our family. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful they've gone out and touched the hearts of the people, like the members of the church touched me. And I had a wonderful victim that took me under his wing and just brought me up through the priesthood with great care. He set up a Sunday where I could be a deacon and pass the sacrament. He set up a Sunday where I could be a priest and to bless the sacrament. And he just looked after me and took me along right in the church. And with the church callings, the only reason I know that I had them was to give me the testimony I've got today, that I know this church is true. And I know that by faith and believing, this is one of the greatest things that ever could happen to man. The first thing was Christ coming here and taking away our sins. I'm sure that we'll be buffeted to some degree for impropriety, but he has opened the door for us. Temple ordinances have the keys for that door. And this is what I just have to have you here together to be able to say this. I wanted to express it to you somehow or other, but everybody's been scattered out and everything. It's hard to do. But with you all here together today, I can tell you my testimony. I know this gospel is true, and with faith and testimony, we'll all once again, one day, be like we were in the pre-existence as a group. We'll be in a group again. But each of the fathers individually will be patrons of their own group. And like the church says, families are forever. They're the greatest thing. That's the whole purpose behind it, is family. And I guess that's about it. But again, I want you to know this gospel is true. And each of us have inheritance right to all the principles, teaching, blessings that church has to offer if we just open our heart to it and accept it. I'm grateful for you for listening for me at this time. And again, I want you to hear my testimony. This gospel is true. It's a major thing. It's the only purpose in life. Without that, it would be much of the traffic out here in the road would be without traffic signals and cops.
Hey, Dad, stay there. Stay there. Stay there. Everybody, we're gonna sing to you. We're singing to you now. So
Do what?
we're singing. So stand up. Are you guys ready to sing happy birthday?
They're going to sing
I
happy
don't want
birthday
like a
to
sissy
you.
happy
They're
birthday.
going to
We
sing
want
happy
like-
birthday to
we
you.
want one of these happy birthdays. Big ones. Ready? Here we go.
Happy birthday
to you.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Grandpa. Happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you, Matt. I appreciate it.
Everybody wave at Grandma.
Again, I want you to know that this is not
Right?
by chance, but it's by divine guidance all year. We were all chosen, and I have a book, can't remember what it's called here, who wrote it. It's called the Saints of Israel, and it's about us. It's not about people past, but it's about us, and where we are, and where we can go. So thank you for listening to me, and I thoroughly appreciate this. And like I've said before, I made 89. Everybody get out of the way because I'm heading straight for 90.
Right, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.